My life growing up was always a delicate balance. I was the older sister, the responsible one, the one who tried to make things easier for everyone. My younger sister, Chloe, was the family's golden child. She was vivacious, charming, and a little bit reckless. Mom and Dad adored her, and rightfully so. She had a sparkle about her that was hard to resist. But I often felt like I existed in her shadow, constantly striving for a recognition that seemed to come so effortlessly to her. My parents, bless their hearts, always talked about education as the cornerstone of a good future. They worked tirelessly, Dad putting in long hours at the factory, Mom balancing a part-time job with running the household. They told me repeatedly that they were saving for my college education, a separate fund they'd started since I was born. It was my light at the end of the tunnel, my ticket to a life beyond our small town, a chance to pursue my dreams of becoming a veterinarian. I clung to that promise, studied relentlessly, and dreamed of the day I'd walk onto a university campus. Chloe, on the other hand, had different priorities. School was never her strong suit, and her focus shifted early on to boys, fashion, and social events. When she announced, barely out of high school, that she was getting married to her high school sweetheart, Mark, a boy from a well-off family, my parents were overjoyed. They saw it as her happily ever after, a chance for her to secure a comfortable life. The wedding planning began immediately, and it quickly spiraled into an extravagant affair. Chloe envisioned a fairy tale wedding, a grand venue, a designer dress, a lavish reception. Mom, usually so practical, seemed to indulge Chloe's every whim. I'd overhear conversations about soaring costs, about needing just a little more for the flowers, for the catering, for the band. Dad would often look stressed, rubbing his temples, while Mom would assure Chloe, "Don't you worry, sweetie. We'll make it happen. Your wedding will be perfect." I started noticing subtle shifts. Our family vacations, once an annual tradition, became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Mom started wearing older clothes, and Dad took on extra shifts, coming home exhausted. Our dinners became simpler, and little luxuries we once enjoyed were quietly cut. When I'd ask about it, Mom would just smile tightly, "Just tightening our belts, honey. Big expenses coming up." I thought she meant general family expenses, or maybe some unexpected bills. I didn't realize then that the big expenses were all for Chloe, and that my future was being systematically drained. My unease grew as the wedding costs mounted. I'd see the glossy brochures spread across the kitchen table, the invoices piled high. Tens of thousands of dollars, easily. I wondered aloud to Mom how they were managing it all, given their usual budget. She'd always wave my concerns away with a dismissive hand, a quick change of subject, or a vague assurance that "everything's fine, darling. Your father and I have it handled." Her eyes, though, held a distant, almost guilty look that I couldn't quite place. I told myself she was just stressed with the wedding planning, trying to make her daughter happy. I didn't realize then that these were not just cracks, but gaping chasms ready to swallow me whole. I was in my senior year of high school, deep in college applications, dreaming of acceptance letters and scholarships. My dream school, the one with the best veterinary program, required a hefty deposit upon acceptance. I spoke to Mom about it, reminding her of the college fund, the money they had promised me since I was a little girl. "Don't worry, sweetie," she'd said, her smile a little too bright. "It's all taken care of. Your fund is safe. Just focus on your grades." She always said that. My fund is safe. Those words were my mantra, my security blanket. I truly believed her. I believed in my parents, in their promise, in their love for me. The day my acceptance letter arrived from my dream university, I screamed with joy. I ran to Mom, waving the letter, tears of happiness blurring my vision. "Mom! I got in. And the deposit is due in 3 weeks." I was practically vibrating with excitement. She took the letter, her smile slowly fading, replaced by a strange, unreadable expression. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the paper. "That's wonderful, honey," she said, but her voice was flat, devoid of the excitement I expected. She didn't hug me, didn't celebrate with me. Just a quiet, unnerving silence. Later that evening, after Dad came home, Mom called me into the living room. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Dad looked tired, his shoulders slumped. Mom sat stiffly on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. My heart began to pound. "Sweetheart," Mom began, her voice strained, "we need to talk about your college fund." My stomach clenched. A cold dread began to spread through me. "Yes?" I prompted, my voice barely a whisper. "The deposit is due soon." Mom looked at Dad, who just sighed and looked away. Then, she turned back to me, her eyes filled with what looked like regret, but also a strange kind of defiance. "Honey," she said, her voice dropping, there isn't a college fund anymore. Not for you." My breath hitched. My mind went blank. "Not for you." The words hung in the air, cold, sharp, devastating. "What do you mean?" I managed to croak out, my throat tight. "Mom, you said it was safe. For my college. For my dreams." Her confession was a torrent of convoluted explanations and desperate justifications. She spoke of unexpected costs for Chloe's wedding, of needing to borrow from my fund, just a little, to make sure Chloe had her perfect day. But the little turned into more, and more, until it was all gone. Every single penny. She explained how they had used my college savings to cover the exorbitant venue, Chloe's designer dress, the lavish catering, the open bar, the custom invitations, the live band. All the things Chloe wanted, all the things that had seemed so excessive. My dreams, liquidated, to pay for her fairy tale. "We thought we'd pay it back, honey, before you needed it," she pleaded, her voice cracking. But then, things got tight. And Chloe's wedding was just so expensive. We had to make sure she had a beautiful day. It was important. My mind raced, reeling from the impact of her words. The careful budget cuts, the stress on Dad's face, Mom's vague answers, Chloe's extravagant demands, it all clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening precision. My own mother. My dreams. My future. Sacrificed. For a wedding. For my sister's happiness. The world tilted on its axis. The love I had for my mom, the trust, the unwavering belief in her promises, it all evaporated in an instant, replaced by a searing pain and a bitter, acidic taste in my mouth. My stomach churned. It wasn't just the money, it was the betrayal. The years of lies, the calculated deception, the blatant favoritism disguised as love. My entire foundation, built on their assurances, had crumbled into dust. I stood there, numb, unable to move, unable to speak, a silent witness to the destruction of my future. The wedding, the fairy tale, the dazzling smiles, they were all built on the ashes of my aspirations. My sister's joy, bought at the cost of my education. Heartbreak, so profound it felt like my chest was being ripped open. Anger, a hot, venomous rage that pulsed through my veins. Shame, for being so blind, so naive, so utterly fooled. And silence. A deafening, echoing silence in my own home, a silence that magnified the screams in my head. I looked at my parents, their faces etched with a mixture of guilt and self-pity. But I saw no real understanding of the magnitude of their betrayal, no true remorse for what they had stolen. Just an expectation that I would understand, that I would forgive, that I would somehow just accept this colossal blow to my life. And that's when I realized, they never loved me the way I loved them. What came after was a raw, visceral struggle for survival. I didn't want revenge that would just burn everything down, I wanted truth, justice, and a chance to reclaim my future. I needed peace, and peace wouldn't come from silence or passive acceptance. I didn't storm out, screaming. The shock was too profound, the weight of the betrayal too heavy. I just stood there, staring at them, seeing them not as my parents, but as strangers who had systematically dismantled my future. The words they had spoken about the college fund being safe echoed mockingly in my mind. So, I finally managed to say, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. That's it? My college. My future. Gone. For a wedding? My mom tried to reach for me, but I recoiled. Sweetie, we're so sorry. We'll help you figure something out. You can go to community college first, maybe work for a few years. Her words were like nails on a chalkboard, every suggestion a further insult. Community college? Work for a few years? My meticulously planned path, my specific dream of becoming a vet, required a rigorous university program, years of specialized study. They hadn't just borrowed from my fund, they had detonated my entire life plan. I walked out of the room, leaving them in their guilt. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door, the walls of my childhood home suddenly feeling like a prison. I spent the rest of the night in a silent agony, tears streaming down my face, not just for the lost money, but for the shattering of my trust, the brutal realization of where I stood in their priorities. Chloe's perfect day had come at the expense of my entire future, and my parents had allowed it, even facilitated it. The next few days were a blur of numb existence. I attended school, went through the motions, but my mind was a chaotic storm. I felt a profound sense of isolation. How could I tell my friends? My teachers? How could I explain that the dream I'd worked so hard for, the future I'd envisioned, had been casually dismantled by the very people who were supposed to support me? I considered all my options, desperate to find a way out of this trap. Scholarships. Loans. Working full-time. But the sheer amount of money needed, combined with my already immense workload, felt insurmountable. The anger festered, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. This wasn't fair. I had been responsible, I had done everything right, and they had betrayed me in the cruelest way. The first step of my revenge, of my reclamation, was to confront Chloe. Not publicly, not yet, but intimately. I found her in her room, surrounded by wedding magazines, glowing with bridal excitement. Chloe, I said, my voice tight. Do you know where the money for your wedding came from? She looked up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. What are you talking about? Mom and Dad are paying for it, obviously. Why? I laid it out for her, calmly, precisely. How Mom and Dad had systematically drained my college fund. Every single penny. For her dress. For her catering. For her fairy tale. Her face, usually so expressive, went blank. Then, a flicker of defensiveness, quickly replaced by a look of dawning horror. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, that's not true. Mom would never. Ask her, I challenged, my voice unwavering. Ask her where all that money came from. Ask her what happened to my college fund. Ask her why I can't go to university now. She did ask. And the ensuing argument between her and Mom was a symphony of denial, accusation, and tearful confession. Chloe, shocked and initially horrified, quickly turned defensive, blaming Mom and Dad for putting her in this position, for not telling her. She wasn't genuinely sorry for my loss, she was sorry for the awkwardness it created, for the stain on her perfect day. The second step was action. I couldn't undo what they had done, but I could make sure they understood the consequences. I began meticulously documenting everything. The acceptance letter, the tuition costs, the emails about the fund, cross-referencing it with the wedding invoices I had seen. I started researching legal options, albeit informally at first, just to understand my rights. I also opened up to my guidance counselor at school, a woman I trusted, who listened with a sympathetic but serious expression. She suggested resources, advised me on financial aid, and most importantly, validated my feelings. My revenge wasn't about destroying their lives, it was about exposing the truth and forcing them to confront the devastating impact of their choices. I didn't announce it to the world, but I made sure our extended family knew. At family gatherings, when aunts and uncles would ask about my college plans, would simply say, unfortunately, my college fund isn't available anymore. Mom and Dad used it to pay for Chloe's wedding. The silence that followed was deafening, the looks on their faces a mixture of shock and discomfort. The whispers began, spreading through the family like wildfire. My parents' carefully constructed facade of loving, supportive parents began to crack under the weight of their own secret. Chloe's wedding proceeded, a lavish affair that felt tainted by the truth I carried. I attended, a quiet observer, my heart aching with a complex mix of bitterness and a strange sense of detachment. I watched Chloe beam, radiant in her expensive dress, dancing carefree, oblivious to the stolen future she celebrated. My parents, trying to look proud and happy, occasionally glanced at me, their smiles brittle. I felt no joy for them, only a profound emptiness. My act of redemption came not from tearing them down completely, but from building myself back up, independently. I applied for every scholarship imaginable, worked 2 jobs during my senior year, saved every penny. I didn't get into my dream vet school right away. It was too expensive, too far out of reach without the fund. But I enrolled in a local community college, taking pre-vet courses, working tirelessly, proving to myself that their betrayal wouldn't define my destiny. It was a harder, longer path, but it was my path. My parents, especially Mom, struggled with the fallout. The whispers from family, the disappointed looks, the cold distance I maintained, it weighed on them. They tried to apologize, to offer belated financial assistance, but the trust was shattered. I accepted their apologies, but I never forgot. I learned that some bonds, once broken, can never be fully mended. I didn't want revenge. I needed peace. And that peace began to bloom when I accepted that my story wasn't about their failure, but about my resilience. It was about standing up for myself, about finding my own way, about proving that I could achieve my dreams, even if it meant a harder journey. I found strength in independence, in the quiet determination to carve out my own future, brick by painful brick. I thought losing them would destroy me, but it made me who I am. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who protects your heart.